Imagine this. Someone saw it all coming 20 years ago. Not just a hunch, not just a bad feeling. They saw the LIV defection. They saw the PGA Tour exile. They saw the personal scandals that would eventually blow up Phil Mickelson's reputation. And that person never said a word. For 2 decades. Complete silence. Why? Because he wasn't just some random analyst. He was the man standing next to Mickelson on the practice range every single day. The man who helped shape the swing that won 27 PGA Tour events and 3 majors. His name is Rick Smith. And for 14 years, from 1993 to 2007, he was Phil Mickelson's swing coach, the closest person to Mickelson's game. The one person who knew not just how Phil swung the club, but how Phil thought, how he processed pressure, how he handled success and failure. Then in April 2007, Mickelson fired him, replaced him with Tiger Woods' former coach. Smith walked away, and for the next 19 years, he didn't say a single word publicly about Phil Mickelson. Until now, 2026. Mickelson's career is in freefall. He played 1 LIV event all year. He withdrew from the Masters. He withdrew from the PGA Championship. He's missing the British Open for the first time in 17 years. And on top of all that, misconduct allegations have exploded across the golf media. 3 California golf clubs where Mickelson is allegedly no longer welcome. Accusations about inappropriate behavior toward women. A photograph shared inappropriately. Mickelson denies everything, calls it an anonymously sourced drive-by shooting. But the damage is done. His name is now tied to scandal. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Rick Smith finally speaks. He says 7 words that sent shockwaves through the golf world. I saw everything coming. So here's the real question. What did he see, and why did he wait 19 years to tell anyone? That decision would have been enough to keep most people quiet forever. But what made him finally break his silence is even more important. Rick Smith wasn't just any coach.
He was the coach. When you look at Mickelson's prime years, the ones where he went from gifted lefty to major champion, Smith was there for all of it. 27 wins, 3 majors, the Masters in 2004, the PGA in 2005, the Masters again in 2006. That was the peak. That was the Mickelson everyone feared.
And Smith was the architect behind the swing that made it possible. They spent thousands of hours together. Practice rounds, early mornings on the range, late nights breaking down footage. Smith knew Mickelson's swing better than Mickelson himself. But more than that, he knew Mickelson's mind. He knew how Phil processed risk, how he chased the spectacular shot instead of the smart one, how his confidence could flip into recklessness in a heartbeat. Smith saw patterns that other people didn't see, because he was there for every round, every practice session, every conversation. He saw the small cracks that would eventually become canyons. And then in 2007 it ended. Suddenly, abruptly, Mickelson made the call. He was bringing in Butch Harmon, the man who coached Tiger Woods. The message was clear. Smith wasn't good enough anymore. Mickelson called it one of the hardest decisions of his career. Said he wrestled with it. Said he made the right choice. Smith didn't fight it. Didn't leak stories to the press. Didn't take cheap shots. He just left. And for 19 years he stayed quiet. But here's what nobody understood at the time. Smith didn't leave because he was bitter. He left because he'd already seen what was coming, and he knew that nothing he said would change it. Most coaches would have moved on and never looked back, but Smith had a front-row seat to something that would take nearly 2 decades to fully unfold. Now, let's go back to those early years, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Smith didn't just see Mickelson's swing flaws. He saw something much deeper. He saw a player who was addicted to the hero shot, the one that had a 5% chance of working but looked spectacular if it did. And in the early 2000s, those shots worked more often than not. Mickelson was young, his body was fresh, his hands were unbelievably fast. He could pull off shots that nobody else even attempted, but Smith knew something that Mickelson didn't want to hear. That style wouldn't last forever. Age catches up, the hands slow down, the body stops recovering, and when that happens, the hero shots don't work anymore. They become disasters. Smith warned him, said you can't play this way forever, said you need to build a game that ages well, something that relies on course management, not miracle shots. Mickelson listened, or at least he pretended to, but deep down, he didn't believe it, because the hero shots kept working. He kept winning. The majors kept coming. So why change? Why play safe when risky was so profitable? Smith saw the problem clearly. Mickelson was falling in love with his own myth. He believed he could keep defying the odds forever, that his talent was limitless, that the rules of aging and decline didn't apply to him. And Smith knew, with absolute certainty, that belief would eventually destroy him. It wouldn't be sudden, it would be slow, a gradual erosion, one bad decision leading to another, one risky shot that backfired, leading to a more desperate shot that backfired even worse, until the whole thing collapsed. Smith saw all of this, and he couldn't stop it. That slow erosion was already happening behind the scenes, but what Smith witnessed in the years after their split would turn his predictions into an unstoppable avalanche. So Mickelson fired Smith, brought in Harman, and on the surface things looked fine. He kept winning, added the 2010 Masters and the 2013 British Open. That gave him 5 majors total. Still winning, still competing, still one of the biggest names in golf. But Smith was watching from a distance, and he saw the same patterns he'd identified years earlier. They weren't getting better, they were getting worse. The risks were getting bigger. The decision-making was getting sloppier. The game was becoming more erratic. And then came LIV Golf, 2022, the biggest earthquake in modern golf history. Mickelson didn't just join LIV, he became the face of it. The leader, the guy who convinced 17 other PGA Tour players to walk away. He called the PGA Tour a dictatorship. He said the Saudis were scary, but he'd work with them anyway. He burned every bridge on his way out, and for a while it looked like he'd gotten away with it. $200 million. A guaranteed contract, freedom from the PGA Tour's rules. But Smith wasn't surprised, because he'd seen this coming 20 years earlier. He knew Mickelson's relationship with the PGA Tour had been fraying for decades. The resentment over rules, restrictions, what Mickelson saw as unfair treatment, Smith saw it before anyone else. The entitlement, the belief that the rules didn't apply to him, the growing frustration with being just another player on tour instead of being treated like the superstar he felt he was. So when LIV came along, Mickelson didn't hesitate. The money was huge, the freedom was tempting, and most importantly, it gave him something he'd craved for years: control. He was no longer answering to the PGA Tour, he was running his own show. But Smith knew what Mickelson didn't. That move would cost him everything. The money was life-changing, no question, but the price Mickelson would pay for that freedom turned out to be far higher than anyone expected. And now, look at where Mickelson is today. He can't go back to the PGA Tour. Even if he wanted to, the road is nearly impossible. Massive fines, a multi-year suspension, a reputation so damaged that many players don't want him back. He's stuck. LIV Golf isn't the sure thing it once seemed. Rumors are swirling that the Saudi funding might dry up, that the league might collapse. And if it does, Mickelson is stranded. No tour wants him. No league wants him. He's a man with 5 majors and nowhere to play them. Smith predicted this too. He saw that Mickelson's pursuit of money and control would eventually box him into a corner, that there's always a price for burning bridges, and that when you make enemies of powerful institutions, they don't forget. But here's the part that Smith says he never wanted to see come true: the personal stuff, the behavior, the reputation damage that goes beyond golf. That's the part that really breaks his heart. Because Smith genuinely liked Mickelson. They were close for 14 years. He saw Mickelson's good side, the charm, the generosity, the way he could make people feel special. But Smith also saw the other side, the side that comes out when things aren't going his way, the entitlement, the disrespect, the belief that he's above the rules that apply to everyone else. Smith says he saw signs of that as early as 2000. He saw the way Mickelson sometimes treated people, the way he'd dismiss advice from anyone he considered beneath him, the way he'd justify questionable behavior because he was a star. And Smith knew. He knew it would eventually catch up with him, that the world has a long memory, that fans don't forget, that the media doesn't let things slide forever. And now, in 2026, it's all out in the open. Accusations that Mickelson engaged in inappropriate behavior at multiple clubs, that he shared explicit images without consent, that he behaved in ways that no longer made him welcome at places he once called home. Mickelson says it's all lies, of course, but the timing of Smith's decision to finally speak is a question that demands an answer. So why now? After 19 years of silence, after watching Mickelson self-destruct from a distance, after seeing every single prediction come true, why didn't Smith just stay quiet forever? That's what makes this story so compelling. Smith says he didn't speak earlier because he was protecting Phil, not from the public, but from himself. He believed that if he kept quiet, maybe Mickelson would figure it out on his own. Maybe he'd change course before it was too late. Smith says he genuinely hoped Mickelson would mature, would learn from his mistakes, would build the kind of game and reputation that ages well. It didn't happen. The hero shots kept coming. The bad decisions kept multiplying. The entitlement kept growing. So Smith stopped hoping. And now, after watching Mickelson's reputation collapse in real time, he's finally had enough. He says it's not about revenge. It's not about settling an old score. It's about honesty. He says someone needs to tell the truth about what he saw. Not to destroy Phil, but to explain how all of this happened. How a player with so much talent could end up so completely lost. Because Smith believes there's a lesson here. For young players. For fans. For anyone who thinks talent alone is enough. Character matters. Humility matters. The ability to listen to people who know more than you matters. And when you lose those things, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're going to crash. Smith says he's been holding on to this story for 2 decades, watching it play out exactly as he predicted. And he can't stay silent anymore. That's the real reason he finally broke his silence. But the bigger question is what this says about Mickelson himself. Look at Mickelson's current situation through Smith's eyes. Every move Mickelson has made since 2022 has been a losing one. The LIV defection got him money, but it cost him legacy. The personal scandals are destroying the goodwill he built over 30 years. His career is effectively over. He's 56 years old. He has nowhere to play. His name is mud in too many circles. And he's still denying things that are increasingly hard to deny. Mickelson's response to the misconduct allegations was to call them an anonymously sourced drive-by shooting. He said none of it is true. But where are the people standing up to defend him? Where are the teammates, friends, sponsors who are rushing to his side? They're not there, because they know what Smith knows. They saw it too. They just didn't say it. Not out loud. Not publicly. Until now. That's the significance of Smith's decision to speak. He's breaking a code. A code of silence that has protected Mickelson for decades. A code that allowed Mickelson to behave a certain way without consequence. Smith is saying, "No more. I'm done protecting you from the truth. I'm done covering for you. I'm going to tell people what I saw and let them decide for themselves." And that decision, to break that silence, is Smith's way of saying that Mickelson's behavior can no longer be excused, explained away, or ignored. And that's exactly where the story leaves us today, with a choice about what we believe and what we're willing to accept from the people we admire. So here we are. Rick Smith finally broke his silence. 19 years of watching. 19 years of waiting. 19 years of hoping Phil would change. He didn't. And now the truth is out. Smith saw it coming. Everything. The LIV defection. The PGA Tour exile. The personal scandals. The destroyed reputation. He saw it all. And he warned Mickelson. Repeatedly. Directly. The response was always the same. Phil knew better. Phil didn't need advice. Phil was in control. And now Phil has lost control of everything. His career, his legacy, his reputation. Smith says he takes no pleasure in being right. He says it's actually painful to watch someone you helped build become so lost. But he says the truth had to come out eventually. Because the golf world needs to understand what happened. Not as gossip, not as scandal, but as a warning. A warning that talent and charisma can only take you so far. That character eventually catches up with you. That the people who care about you are the ones who tell you the hard truths. And when you stop listening, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you start falling. That's what happened to Phil Mickelson. He stopped listening. He stopped growing. And now he's paying the price. Smith doesn't hate him. He never did. He says he still respects the player Mickelson was. The one who could hit shots nobody else could even dream of. But he can't respect the person Mickelson became. And that's the tragedy of this whole story. A player with generational talent. A player who should be remembered as one of the all-time greats. Instead, he's remembered for how it all fell apart. Rick Smith told the truth because someone had to, and the only question left is whether you believe his story or Phil's. So tell me what you think. Was Smith right to wait 19 years before speaking? Does he have a responsibility to protect a player he once coached? Or is the truth more important than loyalty? Drop your take in the comments. I want to hear it, because this story isn't over. It's only just beginning. And if you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of fan who cares about what's really happening behind the scenes on the PGA Tour. That's why this channel exists. For fans who want the real story, not the PR spin. If that sounds like you, hit that subscribe button. We're building something for people who actually pay attention. And trust me, there's a lot more coming. This story has more layers than anyone realizes. Rick Smith isn't finished talking, and neither are we.